Hi, my name is Emily Grandstaff-Rice, and I'm running to be the AIA 2023 President-elect. This past Wednesday, the AIA hosted the first of 3 candidate webinars. The one on Wednesday was attended by Central States, Florida Caribbean, Michigan, New York, Northwest and Pacific, and the Virginias region. All of the candidates were asked questions from Secretary Bill Turner, and we had about 7 minutes to answer as many as we could. I'm very proud by the answers that I gave because, of course, I didn't know what the questions were ahead of time. So many of us were giving on-the-fly answers. But there was one that I would like to clarify. So what you'll see afterwards are the videos of my answers, and I'm going to pause after the first question to give you a little bit more in-depth answer.
We have Emily Grandstaff-Rice, FAIA, candidate for first vice president and 2023 president-elect. Thanks for joining us here. First question, can you expand on the idea of redefining the stereotype of architect to show people more the value of the profession?
Okay, so I'm coming at you from the Dale Street School in Medfield, Massachusetts, because I'm doing programming meetings today. And a lot of times people think that an architect is the one that designs the building only. And a lot of my work has to do with change management, also programming and understanding how educational technology and pedagogy works in that architecture. That's just a really minor example, but all of us play different roles beyond just the person who designs the building or works with the contractor or works with the owner. And I think if we take that to the next level with the AIA, we're all advocates and we're all citizens. You could also say, you know, I'm a mother and I've got that role as well. Ways in which we can bring our specific design skills to the larger benefit of society and think less about staying in our own box, and ways in which our skills can translate to other ideas, or maybe it's ventures or whatever that is.
So the question that this comes from is actually directly from my grassroots speech, where I talked about the stereotype of what it means to be an architect. And upon reflection after answering it, I'm still proud of my answer, because I realized that when I refer to what a stereotypical architect is and sort of how we can break down that concept, it's twofold. One, it's the practice issue that I spoke about, that architects can be much more than traditional practitioners. But the other aspect of it has to do with personal identity. So as a female architect, there have been times where people have either doubted that I am actually an architect or acted a little surprised. For those who have underrepresented racial or ethnic identities, I know that this issue cuts much, much deeper. So at the end of the day, I think ways in which we can normalize that everyone can become an architect. And part of that has to do with what Marian Wright Edelman would say, you can't be what you can't see. Issues of representation, ethnic, gender, racial, in AIA media, but also in the ways in which we hold up those for recognition is incredibly important, especially because of the increasing diversity in the US population, but it's also just the moral case, like it's the right thing to do. I'm not sure as a child I could name a female architect. I definitely know I could not name an architect of color other than probably I.M. Pei until I got to my undergraduate degree. Representation is critically important. And part of my work and my passion in the advocacy that I've done within the AIA is to recognize that not all architects fit one stereotype. We are 94,000 unique members of the AIA, and let's celebrate that.
Seems like the task of climate change and equity is enormous and sort of overwhelming at the chapter level. What advice do you have for chapters, and how might your national presidency support the work of chapters in these areas?
That's an excellent question. I was rewatching Stacey Abrams' grassroots speech yesterday. I actually played it for my office. And the thing that struck me, and I heard it the first time, but it really resonated with me yesterday. And she talked about her father, who said, just because you don't have something doesn't mean you can't do something. And this idea that small steps, small moves, small conversations, even though they might feel small compared with the enormity of, I don't know, saving the world or like making the world just, they feel like there won't be a ripple effect per se, but they do make a difference. And it's important, especially for components that can't, let's say, you know, I spoke recently with AIA Seattle and sort of complimented them on the 2030 educational series that they did, because I think that really changed the conversation amongst all of AIA. And that was an example where you had one component who was very strong and had that great knowledge base, and then was able to inspire and embolden other chapters, some that might have had that experience or some that had parallel experience, to then continue to have that conversation. We have such a great network within the AIA. One, I think we can help each other. And two, sometimes just having a conversation or being curious about something is making its own change. It's when we don't talk about these ideas or say climate change, you know, it's going to be so insurmountable, I don't even know where to begin. How am I going to get involved? And not doing anything about it doesn't actually help it. But when we do have that conversation or say, I want to know a little bit more about it, I think that will move it along. Chapters need to be able to meet the members where they are, and they know their own specific regional, you know, flavor or whatever that is better than anybody else. So this is a long-winded answer, but my point is that these are big problems, but not taking the step is not enough. Just ask the question, move a little forward. If it feels small, it's not. It's going to build to something bigger. And in terms of racial, ethnic, and gender equity, an example that I talk a lot about is, you know, when I entered the profession 20 years ago, the number of women in licensed architects was half of what it is now by percentages, right? So just in my professional career, I've seen progress. I'm not naive enough to think that the gender equity is going to be solved by the end of my professional career. I know it's going to be a long time span, and Despacito Strategakos will say, you know, we're not going to reach parity until 2099, but that's not an excuse for me to not talk about it and not make change.
What more can the AIA do to encourage K12 students to become an architect?
Here I am. You know, get architects involved in school. That's a softball, whoever gave that one to me. I think it's, you know, part of the reason why I do programming and I involve students in the work that I do is so that students can see architects and know what an architect is. There's so much curiosity about it. I personally, I think that a train the trainer type of program, the workforce development within the AIA has released some amazing resources. If you don't know about it, go through the K12 page on the AIA. There's great things that teachers can do. I think the next step is this idea of how do we train architects so that they feel comfortable talking to kids about what they do? Because sometimes we get in our own head about what that language is, and how can we do it in a way that it resonates with kids? I mean, you've seen what Michael Ford does with hip hop architecture. Ohio does a lot of stuff. There's so many things out there. And again, there's no excuse not to do it.
As the profession responds to changing client expectations, what specific actions would you recommend the AIA take to advocate for the value of architects and architecture?
If you look at what architects do, we're doing a lot more today than we did 10, 20 years ago for the same fee. And that's an issue. You know, anyone who's working with technology, you know, we're doing Grasshopper and Revit and renderings and Tally and, you know, embodied carbon modeling and all this sort of stuff. I think changing the client expectation is us being very clear about the value of what we do and charging for what that happens. And I think the AIA can play a role in helping to normalize that conversation, that our relevance pays dividends for our clients. We're actually just a slice of the overall, lifespan of a project. Wouldn't it be great for us to be able to talk about how if you hire an architect and get good design, you will have more profits down the road. And I think that's a conversation that I want to dig into a little bit further, but that's kind of my nice short answer, is that we have to be, we have to advocate for our prices and explain how our work pays dividends down the road.
Cool. That's our time. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching my answers. And of course, we've got another webinar coming up next week and another one at the end of the month. And I will try and do the same recap. So hope all's well. Take care and be well.